second panel, Developing Human Capital. I hope everyone is fully caffeinated, not too many sweet rolls to balance out the caffeine, and we'll try to keep you awake through this seminar. So, we have three great presentations today. They are looking at really different aspects of the human phenomenon in this region, and maybe what we'll do is we'll start off first with Dr. Elira Turdubaeva. She is a Fulbright scholar. She's taught across Central Asia, including one of my favorites, the American University of Central Asia, but she founded the online University of Kyrgyzstan, so hats off on that. So I turn the floor to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, dear Professor Sebastian. Thank you, Mahrabo. Thank you, Elliott School, for inviting me and giving me opportunity to talk. So my talk will be about DSR, Digital Silk Road Initiative, and cybersecurity challenges in Central Asia. Talking about cybersecurity in Central Asia, we have so many challenges in Central Asian countries. As you know, we are former Soviet republics, and we still have Soviet legacy, and all these telecommunications and infrastructural, technological infrastructural, we have now from USSR, so still Russia is quite influential, providing internet and telecommunications to former Soviet republics, including Central Asia. So we have so many technical also limitations because it's landlocked. As you know, Kyrgyzstan, and we have now still internet penetration is also maybe Kazakhstan and far more developed, but other four stands are far behind. So now with, as we mentioned in previous panels, with the influence of great power competition, China, Russia, and other Western countries, we still have to struggle with freedom of internet, freedom of net, and citizens' access to information. Given the authoritarian countries in Central Asia, and according to media freedom, all 5 countries' stands are not free. Kyrgyzstan was partially free, but now after 22 elections, we are also now going back to authoritarian club. So we have challenges in single vendor dependencies, also technical limitations and great power competition. So these are the 3 challenges in cybersecurity. About the DSR initiative, since 2015, China started investing a lot in Digital Silk Road initiative. It is a part of China's BRI expansion, so Belt and Road Initiative. Now it includes massive digital infrastructure, including 5G, fiber optics, telecommunications, soft power, including media, education, and more also China's soft power in culture. Even if Central Asian countries don't speak Chinese, we still have a lot going on in terms of soft power and digital infrastructure, and Digital Silk Road is a huge project by China, and China is investing billions of dollars in this. And key components, as you see, these are data centers run by Chinese companies like Hikvision, Huawei, Xiaomi, and many others I will mention now, and smart city technologies, including facial recognition cameras. China has spent $79 billion in this since 2013, in the last 10 years, according to World Bank data. This digital DSR, it was initially known as Information Silk Road, and now it's growing with surveillance technologies and also infrastructural development and data management. So all these data centers, which are maintained and deployed and run by also Chinese Communist Party affiliated companies like Hikvision or China's national telecommunication. They are being also stored and shared with the Chinese government. And these companies, Huawei, ZTE, Alibaba, Hikvision, and Dahua, they have huge agreements with Central Asian countries in terms of data, mining data, storing data, and sharing it with Chinese government. So this regarding surveillance technologies, yeah. So we have this is of course geopolitical influence, surveillance technologies, and strategic partnerships and expanding capabilities and global leadership. Under current Xi Jinping's administration, the development of these technologies has accelerated dramatically, and worldwide also Chinese tech companies, they also supply artificial intelligence surveillance technologies in 63 countries worldwide. And according to Carnegie Endowment. That's why it's really, really important now, all these surveillance technologies with the use of AI and how they are using this data. Given the facial recognition cameras, they didn't consent public. They didn't ask in Central Asian citizens whether they agreed to give their facial recognition data to Chinese companies. So this is under the umbrella of Safe City, or like this is really disturbing. So as you can see here, Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan, they have deployed in Osh, Bishkek, in Tashkent, in Uzbekistan, in big cities, Almaty, Astana. They have these facial recognition cameras, and from China National Electronics Import and Export Corporation, reportedly for free they provide. So in Kazakhstan, Astana is using these cameras, capital city surveillance systems maintained by Chinese firm Zhejiang Dahua Technology. And Uzbekistan, China Huawei invested $1 billion to build traffic monitoring system with 883 facial recognition cameras, police forces supplied with buses equipped with facial recognition cameras already both in Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan. When they brought these public buses, they were already deployed inside. So, and Tajikistan also government introduced this with Huawei, a $22 million deal to install hundreds of CCTVs in Dushanbe and Khujand and big cities. Except for Russian DSR, we have also Chinese DSR, we have Russian cybersecurity threats, risks in Central Asia. So we have targeted espionage by Russia-linked threat actor TAG-110. And maybe you've also heard about this. They're connected to Blue Delta, APT-28 and Fancy Bear, targeted over 60 organizations, primarily in Central Asian countries, mostly government and public entities. And malware deployment, these hackers, they use malware, including HAT-Vibe, Loader, and Cherry Spy backdoor delivered through malicious Microsoft Word as an attachment sent to emails of government officials. And infrastructure targeting GRU unit, the cyber actors target government services, banks, transportation, energy, strategic energy assets, and also healthcare sectors. And SORM, maybe you've heard about SORM. SORM is a deployment of Russian SORM lawful interpret systems with national backbone infrastructures, enables deep pocket inspection and surveillance capabilities. So if you go to Central Asia and use local SIM cards, like for example Beeline or others, they have already installed SORM. So all your messaging, all your internet data, mobile data, calls, voice messages, everything is shared with SORM, which local governments have access, and also they share it with Russia. So this is really disturbing, and then they use this data to target activists, human rights people, or journalists, investigators, or oppositional leaders also. And then they share this with Russia. So we have data sovereignty concerns like foreign access. So all these surveillance technologies by Chinese companies in Russia and Chinese Ministry of Public Security, they have access to this data, and they can share, they can use it maybe to deploy Uyghurs, to locate Uyghurs like minorities in Xinjiang province who are escaping China to Central Asia. But this is not just safe city. There are a lot of going on behind, so it's all data sovereignty concerns and network control. China could potentially monitor or divert data traffic and even cut off these links, because they are now providing 5G Huawei in Central Asia for mobile connections, and also internet fiber optic line Kazakhstan has from China. So we get internet, Central Asian countries, from Russia, Kyrgyzstan gets from Russia, Kazakhstan, and also from China, and Kazakhstan also. So weak protections, and we don't have cybersecurity professionals. There is a lack of professionals, and limited regional data protection and legal system is also very weak. We don't have enough cybersecurity laws which protect also this data, and smart city risks. So this China access to a huge pool of data on data Central Asia's faces. This is a really huge cybersecurity threat for Central Asian states. And this, as I have mentioned before, this competing great power influence and capacity and governance gaps, data sovereignty, as I have mentioned, where we get internet, Central Asian countries, and this Chinese surveillance technologies, export of surveillance model. Chinese surveillance model, like Central Asian leaders, like political, they are now authoritarian, so they like Chinese model, like surveilling citizens, so that's why it fits. That's why the adoption of this model is high, and China is exporting its model of invasive, all-encompassing surveillance to Central Asia, where citizens are usually suspicious and they're not being consented for using this data, and Chinese companies enrich this database and share. So the Chinese facial recognition deployment, as I have mentioned, is huge. In Kazakhstan, also Korkem Telecom is partnership with Chinese firm Zhejiang Dahua Technology. So connections to security and safe city, as I've said, it's not safe city, it's already vehicle tracking, facial recognition, gait recognition, and this is huge data. About the Russian, the Tech 110, so this is the recent hacker attacks by Russians, and today was in the morning also news about the power outrage in Spain and Portugal yesterday, that already they're investigating, and they're suspicious that it may come from Russian cyber attack and hackers. So state group, they target government organizations, and especially after the war in Ukraine, it is being intensified, all these cyber attacks. And these are the cases from pro-Russian groups causing 50% increase in ICS and OT attacks in Central Asia, and they are also targeting not only government but also financial and other strategic assets. So this SORM, yeah. Conclusion, yeah. My conclusion is that we need to prioritize security, integrate cybersecurity by design, protection by design, privacy by design, and adopt laws like GDPR in EU, and to protect our data. It's because it's data sovereignty, and strengthen frameworks, legal regulatory systems, foster cooperation with other countries rather than China and Russia, but with Western EU and maybe other countries. And recommendations I have for governments, for international and private sector. And this is our book. I think I'm out of time. And thanks to Marlene, L'Oreal, and Central Asia program, we were able to publish this book. If you see this QR code, you will see the book, and it was published by Lexington Book Series, and me and my co-author Evangelia Papautsaki from New Zealand, we have edited this volume about the media and social media use in Central Asia. So thank you very much, and here's my contacts, and these are the references for the data I have used. Yeah. Thank you.
That was great. And now we turn to former Ambassador Allan Mustard, multi-decorated former U.S. Ambassador to Turkmenistan. He's served in a number of posts overseas with great honor and distinction, and he's going to speak to us about giving an update on education in Turkmenistan.
While we're waiting for the slides to come up, I'm going to apologize to Dr. Rudenshiold, who doesn't like numbers on slides, because I'm an economist. I freely admit to that %. And we economists live and die on numbers and statistics. So my apologies, Eric. I will throw up some numbers. All right. Just use this. All right. Page down. All right. Let's take a little stroll down through memory lane. As you all know, in 1991, Turkmenistan, like the other former Soviet states, became independent and inherited the Soviet-era educational system, which was 10 years of primary and secondary education, 5 years of post-secondary education to get the equivalent of a bachelor's degree. President Niyazov decided, or do I need to use the microphone here? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
I do. Okay, so President Niyazov decided that Turkmenistan was a nation of pastoral sheep herders and therefore did not need a robust post-secondary educational establishment. In fact, it didn't even need a robust secondary establishment. So in 1993, he decided 9 years of primary and secondary is enough, and 2 years of post-secondary is plenty for a nation of sheep herders. That was not changed until well after his death, with the result that doctors, lawyers, architects, engineers, school teachers, and other professionals entered the workforce with only 2 years of college education, the equivalent of an associate degree in the West. He further decreed that foreign degrees would no longer be recognized, which led to an exodus of talent, particularly back to Russia and a few other countries like Belarus and Ukraine. The tide only began to turn after 20 years. In 2013, when Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov decreed that we would return and actually increase to the 12-year primary and secondary system that's used in the West. They flirted for a little bit with the 4-year bachelor's degree, but could not abide by the Bologna process. So you do 12 years of school, and then you can go to the university for 5 years to get the equivalent of a bachelor's degree. The need for better educated employees in government became so acute in 2022 that the government finally caved in and said we will recognize all foreign degrees from accredited universities, which was a big change in policy. Now I'm going to give you, here's the initial tranche, Eric, of status quo numbers here. Turkmenistan today has 22 degree-granting civilian institutions, 7 military and security institutions. Plans to open this fall a private university focusing on business administration that will be sponsored by the Union of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs. And now on top of that, you have the Academy of Sciences. The Academy of Sciences is the only institution in the country that is authorized to award PhDs. Of course, the medical university awards MDs, so those are the only doctorates. The institutions collectively accept between 11,000 and 14,000 students per year, and to put that in perspective, in 2004, there was a cap on post-secondary education of 4,000 students per year. So they roughly tripled the size of the student intake. Nevertheless, these institutions can absorb only about half of the Turkmen students seeking higher education. The rest go abroad. So in any given year, about 30,000 are in Russia, 15,000 are in Turkey, 6,600 in Belarus, 2,000 in China, 1,600 in Kazakhstan, and 900 in Uzbekistan. By comparison, last year we had 380 Turkmen students studying in the United States, so we are a bit player in that. The Ministry of Education publishes a list of approved universities, but that only applies to transfer of money at the official exchange rate. Now, it used to apply that they wouldn't let you study abroad if you went to an institution, and they wouldn't recognize that degree if you came home. They tried to suppress that, but now it's just basically a matter of transferring money at the official exchange rate. If you go to an unapproved institution, your parents have to send you money through the black market, at the black market exchange rate. Just a couple remarks on vocational education. Vocational education absorbs about 55,000 post-secondary students, and the professional technical up there is basically it's mechanics, electricians, equipment operators, low-level bookkeeping. There are 24 such schools. They are not considered really, truly post-secondary education. The secondary professional education runs 1 to 2.5 years and includes paraprofessional training such as licensed practical nursing, business administration, tourism, art, music, and accounting. It's roughly equivalent to an associate degree, and Turkmenistan has 44 such schools. Now, when Russian medium instruction was largely shut down in 2013, there was a huge shortage of textbooks because the textbooks were all in Russian, and it took a while to get them translated into Turkmen, several years in fact. So a dozen years later, those shortages have largely been alleviated, but the quality of instruction remains poor. When you had no textbooks, the way the textbooks were distributed was the teacher stood at a lectern and dictated, read from the textbook, and the children transcribed the textbook. And to this day, that is kind of the modus operandi in the schools, that the teacher stands at a lectern, reads, you all sitting out there in the classroom take notes, and if a child has a question, raises her hand and says, I have a question, we'll answer that later, but later never comes. So the quality of instruction just isn't that good. The Turkmen press publicizes widespread use of laptop computers in secondary education, but when I asked about this, I was told, yes, the laptops are issued, the next day they are confiscated back from the students and put back in storage. So that's kind of a canard. The one piece of good news is that Turkmen language Wikipedia is no longer blocked. So students can now go to it and get information in the Turkmen language. Now, starting around 2022, the International University for Humanities and Development began granting master's degrees. It was followed by the Institute of International Relations, Oguzhan Engineering University, and then some others, including the Institute of Culture and the Agricultural University. This broke the monopoly of the Academy of Sciences on granting of postgraduate degrees. Turkmenistan now recognizes medical degrees from foreign universities, even for work in government jobs, and since the bulk of the government, bulk of your hospitals are run by the government, that's important. Russian degrees are recognized for work in the military and in the security apparatus. Other foreign degrees in strong demand are language instructors, law, business, economics, and information technology. And you might ask, well, how do they gauge demand? Well, the Cabinet of Ministers makes that decision. So the Cabinet of Ministers decides what demand will be, what they need in the way of foreign degrees. Romania and Turkmenistan have worked to develop a dual degree program in computer science, building on existing relationships between the oil and gas universities in each country. That said, the former Turkish university lost its Turkish support during its transformation into the Oğuzhan Engineering University, due to Turkmenistan's refusal to allow decentralized control of curriculum. Same thing happened when Japan tried to replace Turkey as the counterpart for that university. Concept of curriculum being controlled by a faculty senate rather than by the bureaucracy in the Ministry of Education was simply too much to bear. And that calls into question how far this partnership with Romania is going to go. The jury is still out on that. Okay, Eric, are you ready? Here we go. There will be a quiz on this. Please memorize these numbers. Actually, no. There are only a couple numbers here I want you to look at, and we'll get to that. Times Higher Education, the source of these numbers, includes no Turkmen universities in its rankings of the top 2,100 institutions of higher education globally. I know you're shocked by that. It has collected data on 13 of the 22 universities in Turkmenistan, but merely lists them as reporting institutions without a ranking. These 13 universities collectively have a student body of about 43,000, which is, it's something over 40% of total Turkmen in higher education. Now, what I found notable in these were some of the ratios. So, in these 13 institutions, female students account for 47% of the student body, a little less than half. Women are overrepresented in study of foreign languages, medicine, and pedagogy, which is consistent with the Soviet legacy of women serving as physicians and teachers. That said, we see near balance of genders in engineering and finance, and impressive gains in agriculture and energy. Bearing in mind the Soviet legacy of gender discrimination and the patriarchal nature of Turkmen society, this is encouraging. One other number I just want to point out is this down here, the percentage of foreign students in there, less than 0.5% as compared to the number of Turkmen who study abroad, which is roughly half. Last October, Kent State University in Ohio signed an agreement with the Turkmenistan Ministry of Education to explore ways to cooperate in education. This follows an abortive effort by Wright State University, also in Ohio, to develop a relationship with the International University for Humanities and Development. That attempt at collaboration foundered because the two sides really had different visions of what it was going to involve. Wright State viewed it as a cash cow. We're going to go to this natural gas-rich country, and they're going to pay us buckets of money to provide them with services. IUHD looked at it and said, we have this wealthy United States, which has a state university, not understanding that state universities are always looking for money, and they're going to give us a bunch of stuff for free. And so that kind of fell apart. Kent State has its eye on starting an MBA program in Ashgabat in the next academic year, and unlike Wright State, has come to Turkmenistan with its eyes open. Both sides have a little bit more realistic view of what the other can offer. So this is another encouraging sign that the government of Turkmenistan has started to really seriously reach out to foreign counterparts to improve its educational system. And I will stop there.
Thank you for all of those numbers. So our third presentation is from Alexander Wolters. We're going to pull up in a second here. He is the resident representative for the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung in Kazakhstan. He's the former director of the OSCE Academy in Bishkek, and an eminent person not to be missed, speaking about OSCE Academy. Turn the floor to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rudenshiold. My first question, can you hear me? How is the connection?
We hear you fine.
Very well, thanks so much. Then I will start. Yeah, and I start with a disclaimer in what I present today. I do not give any views or perspectives of the Friedrich Ebert Foundation here in Kazakhstan. What I'm going to present is fully my personal view on developments in higher education in Central Asia. And of course, here I'm very much also referring to my experiences I made as director of the OSCE Academy in Bishkek. I have divided my presentation in 3 parts. I will first talk about the, let's say, promising conditions for the development and also for donor and international engagement into higher education in Central Asia. Then I will provide a snapshot of the constraints I believe that still exist for such kind of engagement into higher education in the region. And finally, I use the example of the OSCE Academy in Bishkek as, let's say, one case of an international collaboration that I believe deserves support for its capacity to engage contemporary debates about higher education reform, and also that pushes for regional cooperation in higher education, something that I believe is very much needed in the region and that deserves much more attention from every possible actor. I want to start, however, with a short remark on a commentary, on an intervention that was recently made by Paul Goebel from the Jamestown Foundation. He wrote in his contribution to the Eurasia Daily Monitor that Central Asia is facing a new brain drain these days. He refers to an old brain drain in Soviet times when the Central Asians moved to Russia, and he says today we are observing a similar situation of a brain drain with young people, with high-skilled graduates and laborers moving to the West, or what he calls Pacific Rim, and entering institutions of higher education there or the labor market. I agree with his observation. I would just like to be a little bit skeptical about the solution that he proposes, that is to make an extra effort to win those young, highly skilled graduates and laborers back. I believe it's a much better way or a much better decision to go for strengthening the capacities we have already on the ground. And I would also argue with Paul Goebel that it's not necessary or such engagement or such strengthening does not require additional foreign assistance. I believe that is something that the Central Asian states can do by themselves. What I do think is necessary is indeed a selective approach of international donors to fund institutions that can give particular examples for collaboration on a regional level. Why is regional level why are regional level perspectives important? Why should we maybe engage more into higher education in Central Asia? What are the promising grounds? First, let's start with the population. As you all know, in Central Asia, the population is young. The average age of the population for the whole region is currently 26 years. As a comparison, we have the United States at 38 years, and Russia at 40 years. If you move to the EU, you are already at 45 years. So the Central Asian population is very young. There are a lot of young people who need and are thirsty for good education. We have also every year more than 500,000 of school graduates entering institutions of higher education, so there is quite a market or need for good higher education, for universities and academies to be present in the region, to take in all those young people. Furthermore, there's currently, I would call it, a developmental drive in Central Asia. Central Asia is proud of its high economic growth rates. It wants to modernize. It's keen to establish more global connectivity or Eurasian connectivity for sure. Higher education, I find, is certainly a part of that drive. There is, from Kyrgyzstan's higher educational reform to Uzbekistan's attempts to internationalize its higher educational institutional landscape, to integration of Bologna principles into higher education, the attempt to enjoin, again, PISA, as well as all kinds of benchmarking, and especially here in Kazakhstan, for example, this very strong pressure on on individual scholars to make sure that they have peer-reviewed publications, because it is something you currently need if you want to make a career in academia. In that regard, of course, it's not very different from academia anywhere else in the world. Just the push comes very sudden. It is, of course, also a big challenge for many scholars that we have here at the institutions. Last but not least, very positively, we have new political impulses. On the last so-called consultative meeting of the five Central Asian presidents, we had Turdubaeva once more calling for a unified sphere of higher education for the region of Central Asia. And already in the fifth consultative meeting of the presidents in Dushanbe in 23, we had the same focus on youth and youth development on a regional scale, mentioned in the final declaration by the five presidents. These are, I would say, all factors and conditions that are calling to all, again, possible actors to engage further into education, especially also into higher education. What I find are still obstacles are, first of all, actually the shrinking and closing spaces we observe in the region. I think we heard it just in one of the presentations that the scores for freedom, for political liberties are going down in Central Asia, for Kyrgyzstan as well, where I used to work for quite a time. And we have faced that, or I've at least personally also come across that in my capacity of the head of office here of the Friedrich Ebert Foundation. I remember that a year ago or so we had a regulation circulating among employees of state institutions, calling on them to ask for special permission if they were about to touch on topics that were considered sensitive by the political authorities. One of these topics, for example, was decolonization. It was something they didn't want to have their scholars talk about, especially while Moscow was watching so closely. I remember that at the academy we were ending up eventually in discussions that came close to self-censorship, if we should be publishing and working further, for example, on Chinese engagement in the Central Asian states or not. So we have felt also in academia very much this closing spaces that has been also felt by everybody who works, for example, in the fields of human rights or democratization. The second, I find from a practical point of view, much bigger constraint have been ministerial bureaucracy and the very poor governance of education and higher education. There are outdated curricula, there are outdated enrollment practices, there are outdated forms to change actually existing regulations. I remember that in the academy we came across a regulation that for hiring a professor you needed actually only a paper application. There was not even mentioned the possibility of having an interview, a face-to-face meeting with a professor you wanted to hire into a position. And last but not least, maybe as a third point that I find as a constraint for everybody who wants to engage into regional exchange for academia in Central Asia, there are no attempts or trials to actually put into action those words that Turdubaeva was mentioning in his last presentation for the meeting of the five presidents. There are international efforts to establish exchange with students and scholars, but there is no actually regionally driven initiative. There is no nucleus, you would say, of an emerging Central Asian landscape or sphere of higher education. That makes it difficult because nobody really knows where to start and how to build this up. To come to the OSCE Academy as one case, that is only a case I take because I'm most familiar with it, but it would go for the UCA, it would go for AUCA, it would go for other higher education institutions that have on their agenda the attempt to enroll students from almost all Central Asian states. Even, as was mentioned just earlier, taking in students from Turkmenistan has been always a challenge. I believe the OSCE Academy is worth supporting, and such institutions are worth supporting because the first thing they do is they actually provide an example of academic or regionalization for academia in Central Asia. They are providing a platform to experience regional education exchange that starts with things like a board of trustees where the ministries of the five Central Asian states are represented, if even in Vienna, because it's the OSCE, it's a permanent council via the foreign ministries. Still there, the five ministries of education come together and have to decide on a very concrete object like the OSCE Academy. Not that they always appear to all meetings of the Board of Trustees, or appeared don't know if that has changed in the last years, but still there is a form of commitment. There is an attempt to take in professors and have lectures given by scholars coming from all over Central Asia, as well as, of course, a student body that is recruited from all over Central Asia. And last but not least, at least for the OSCE Academy, eventually this also led or resulted in the development of a network of institutions of higher education from all over the region. And as such, indeed, was a living example of how regionalization can be at least attempted on a minuscule or microscopic scale. The second thing that was worth, why I believe it's worth still supporting selected institutions of higher education is, of course, that such an international cover, I would almost use the Russian word krysha, allows for keeping some spaces open. Be it simply a classroom in which students can engage as critically as they want. Just 3 months ago, I was sitting in the defense committee for the master thesis of the academy, and yes, the theses that were presented and defended indeed had a very strong critical engagement with the political situation in the region. And I would say what has been also a third point that I find is very much worth of support for various actors is, of course, that an institution like the OSCE Academy eventually produces a network of graduates, the alumni that are then going back, not always, but very often, to their home countries, and from there keep up at least a spirit of togetherness, of commitment to an idea of regional belongingness. When we had discussions with guests coming to the OSCE Academy who were then facing and asking our students what they most enjoyed about their experience at the academy, next to internships and all the other things, what was often mentioned was the fact to have a chance to meet actually students from the other countries, because that is something we are lacking. If I ask around among young people in Kazakhstan, who of them has been already to Kyrgyzstan or Uzbekistan, it's all very few numbers. Central Asian students meet within the framework of Erasmus Plus studies somewhere in Europe, or maybe if they graduated and then moved to Russia, they meet there, but rarely it comes via forms of exchange that takes place in the region. For that, I believe the institution like the OSCE Academy, and later on, of course, the alumni networks, these graduates who still keep contact and actually can help a little bit on a very small scale, exchanging views and perspective is something very worth maintaining, I would say, also expanding. As 2 points before my time runs out, that I also would like to mention as something that deserves engagement, although I don't have a proper solution on how to do it, is that in Central Asia we are still lacking professional associations. There is no association of political sciences, there is no association now of economists, for example, that would come together on a regular scale to discuss curricula, to discuss subjects and also lines of inquiry, of academic inquiry, and last but not least also would form something like a lobby that would ask for further modernization of given regulations and curricula. That for the moment is lacking. This idea was at some point at least formulated in the OSCE Academy by colleagues that we have brought in. It still waits for its implementation. And I hope that with the support and discussions, be it via ESCAs or other forms of, for the moment, foreign-funded professional associations, that will at some point take place, if even only by forms of creating chapters of those international organizations. The last point to mention is that the OSCE Academy was also always a very good anchor to engage Afghanistan. We always had students from Afghanistan. Afghanistan was always a country from where the Academy received most applications. I had several discussions in my time as the director of what it would take to actually open this Central Asian higher education institutions to more Afghan students. Of course, after 21, that became even more difficult. But before, there was already an opportunity missed when we saw that students from India and Pakistan were flooding medical institutions all over Central Asia, and the Afghans did not come to such a level of exchange with their northern neighbors. a missed opportunity, but maybe something worth again to consider if we ask ourselves what it is that we can still do and where we can maybe support a further engagement with young people from Afghanistan, because of course Afghanistan, if we come back to that question population-wise, is even younger than Central Asia. Thank you so much. With that I stop.
Well, thank you very much. 3 very different and very interesting presentations. Any questions from the floor? Otherwise, I have a few of them. Please.
Is Alexander still there? Hello, Alexander, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. My name is Victoria Clement. I'm with the Foreign Service Institute. You mentioned that decolonization was a topic that was discouraged. Could you talk a little bit more about that, please, and tell us which country and how was it discouraged?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Shall I answer right away, or there's going to be a collection?
Yeah,
of,
please, why don't you
questions?
just go ahead?
What's the procedure?
Go ahead and answer.
Very well. It was this was in Kazakhstan. First of all, it was in Kazakhstan. It was a regulation, that copy of which I received. And of course, this question of decolonization popped up into our eyes quite quickly. I must say that among my staff, with whom I work here together, I have also just recent graduates, and some of the projects we wanted to engage with was decolonization, because it is something that you can currently indeed pick up from the street as one of the discussions and debates. It's going around, and it finds its expression in various forms of academic, but also, for example, art engagements. And we also know that this is something that has been very much observed by observers in Russia, and we have been in the last 2 years observing this ping pong, that every time one of the Central Asian states starts to try some form of decolonization, be it reforming or rewriting its history, or starting commemorating or introducing new commemorating practices about the hunger in Kazakhstan, 1916, and Urkun in Kyrgyzstan. And we always see that this receives a harsh commentary from Russia. And our impression was that there's an oversensitivity somewhere in the government in Kazakhstan, trying to make sure that we are not crossing red lines and angering the northern neighbor, because we still are very much in need of a very good relation to the northern neighbor, which I understand. It was still something surprising for us, because so far out of this, even if you can pick up the discussion here on the crowd, it's nothing that for the moment would make it into the political realm. I leave it with that.
All right, now lots of hands are flying up, so please.
Hello, I'm Dr. Elena Soreo. I am the Associate Rector of a private Ukrainian business university, which happens to be the only business university that is EU accredited, Ukrainian one that is. My question though has to do with your comments with regard to Afghanistan and the large youth population and the necessity for the development of so many things in Afghanistan. But how does can that be taken, how could that possibly take place, given the fact that the current government of Afghanistan has totally turned its back on more than 50% of the population, the women, and so that they are excluded from everything, just everything. So how would you see this possibly being transversed in the future?
Why don't you go ahead and answer that one?
Yeah, I of course have no final answer to that. What I'm referring to is the problem we faced at the academy in the month that followed the takeover of the Taliban. And I'm not saying that it is possible currently, I don't know how, to bring in young Afghani, especially Afghani women from Afghanistan to universities, or to the OSCE Academy for that matter, in Bishkek or in Central Asia. But I had at the end, we were not even looking at Afghanis inside Afghanistan. The most applications we received from Pakistan and from people stuck in the refugee camps without any way to get somewhere else, even if they had all the educational degrees, had finished BA, etc., and could prove it, but who could not move on any further because for whatever reason. So we were trying to get them into the programs at the academy, often without much success, because then the Kyrgyz authorities, that was back at my time at least, in the years right away after the Taliban takeover, were not issuing visas anymore. And apart from that, of course, we were bombarded also with requests from graduates, from other scholars, Afghan scholars somewhere else, who suddenly were facing some form of being sent back to Afghanistan and wanted to have a different place where they could anchor themselves, and for which we also tried at the academy to develop a special program. Back then, time was not enough. There was also no international support for that. And regional visa support was also very, very low because the Central Asian states kept the issuing of visa to a very, very restricted, limited number. I don't know what it would take for the international community to further engage here and get those numbers up again, but I would say it's worth a try. And if that means it doesn't work yet with Afghan women from, or Afghan female students from Afghanistan to come to Central Asia, but only those who are still stuck in Pakistan, in Bangladesh and India, then that even would be a very good first step.
Thank you, that's great. Kate, did you have something?
I did.
In the back.
First of all, thank you, all three of you, for really fascinating presentations. I have a question for Elira Turdubaeva. You mentioned that a lot of the surveillance equipment that comes already, in the SIM card or the buses when they arrive, they've already got the surveillance equipment, and that there aren't a lot of experts who kind of know how to manage the security protocols. I'm curious about public perception of smart cities or this technology. How do average people feel about what's happening with regard to surveillance? Are they aware of it? Do they feel safer? I'm just very curious. What is the sort of the common person's response to it? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, this is an important research question, maybe possibly in the future. But we did a research among students, university students, cybersecurity perceptions in Kyrgyzstan, and the results were like, most of them are not aware of the consequences of giving out private information, including their passport numbers and addresses. So they even don't read these agreements before using and hitting the button, I agree, I confirm. So if university students who are young and digitally savvy, they are not aware of the consequences of private information and cybersecurity, the remaining, who are adults or who are less technologically savvy, it's even worse. So, but these are all new, social media and all this FCRs, face facial recognition cameras. Most people are not even aware. They think it's it's safe city for violating traffic rules, or accidents, or looking for criminals. So they think it's good, but they are not aware that this data is being collected and stored and shared with China, and local authoritarian regimes are also using it to locate who is where, who is doing what, and so. This awareness is very low, and for this we need, of course, media literacy, digital literacy, and now AI literacy with all these deep fakes and misinformation. So I think that we need to do it through education and informing publics.
just two fingers on just that very point. You said in your presentation that they share with Russia, implying the governments are doing it, but isn't it implicit that with this software that the Chinese and the Russians are selling to the Central Asians, that's already baked into the computer software? The governments aren't really sharing it themselves, it's just automatically going to Moscow and Beijing.
Yes, it's both hardware and software. Like we have, for example, antivirus Kaspersky, which is also, Kaspersky, Russia, but now its headquarters in Amsterdam, but still we have also Telegram, Одноклассники, ВКонтакте were before, now Telegram also, who is the owner of Telegram, it's also Russian-based. So both hardware and software, and already this KGB, like Russian intelligence, is already there. Like it's also my personal, not my institution's opinion, from my personal contacts who work in government. So they already know that they're being watched by, and they're also sharing all this intelligence with Russia, and now with BRI and the SR with China. And for example, 2 days ago in Osh, in the southern part of Kyrgyzstan, a Russian embassy worker, a Russian woman, was detained for recruiting Russian army to fight in Ukraine, young people in Osh. So this was a huge event. Like we knew, but we wouldn't detain the diplomat like this. But now it happened, and it's also now being discussed. And so this was already there during USSR, after USSR, both software and hardware, and we're all aware of this. And it's unfortunately, so we lack these experts who are good in cybersecurity and laws as regulations, and also public awareness. So this is the citizens' right to claim their data, why they're being surveilled, and with whom our government is sharing. So this needs to come from grassroots, from citizens themselves.
Please.
I want a two-finger on this as well. I mean, your description was one of competition between Russia and China and Western internets, but it sounds more like what you're talking about is Central Asia falling behind the Great Firewall. That this is hard-baked. You've got Russia, FSB, and hackers and all that stuff doing their things, but what you're really talking about is there an alternative? What's your optimistic scenario? What's the counterbalance? Because the story you told is just that Central Asia is going to be behind the firewall.
Yes, it's a very difficult question. Yeah, yes. This comes all with sovereignty, data sovereignty, and security. It's a security issue, really. So we have like this. If we are connected to internet through Russia and through China, yeah. So where is sovereignty? We need our own satellite to send. And we have, Starlink. We have now Starlink since last 2 years. People are buying. It's just $500, and we have permission already to buy Starlink. And with all this remote work after COVID, but still it's expensive for ordinary people. So we need this autonomous connection to internet first, because all this data through fiber optics are being provided. So after that, then we can go more sovereign.
Please.
Okay, thank you. Aygul Karakulova, GW University, visiting scholar from Kazakhstan. So, Alexander Wolters, thank you for sharing your observation outcomes on higher education in Kazakhstan and Turkmenistan. And my questions to Allan Mustard and Elira Turdubaeva. Sorry if I'm wrong in pronunciation of your last name. Yeah, Mustard?
Perfect.
Okay. So, as for higher education, there are many foreign students from Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan in Kazakhstan, and I have taught many students from these countries, and their governmental strategy to get education in Kazakhstan, and their diplomas are confirmed, and they have work in their countries. They have excellent jobs in their countries, and the writers in Turkmenistan, they thankfulness to us and from Uzbekistan. So, according to in Turkmenia, thank you for detailed description according to the system of education, and there are only 13 universities, unfortunately, but hopefully they will be increased in.
Well, there are 22.
22,
there are
but
22
13?
civilian universities, but there were only 13 that have provided data on enrollments. So the 13 represent a little over 40% of the total student body.
Okay.
I thought I made that clear. So the 13 that you saw listed are the ones that report internationally on themselves.
Hopefully, yeah, hopefully, and a number further from 22, or it will be increased. So I want to say that not only in economical, but there are trading and educational, so interconnections in post-Soviet space, and as it was mentioned in pipelines, transformations of oil and gas, and there are educational interactions, and not only education, I want to say, but in politics. So it's heard that in Turkmenia, political system, as it's common knowledge, and they will be so organized the opponent, how to say, not opponent, but oppositional alliance, Ebert. Have you heard about it? Because it's impossible to have own word in Turkmenia as for continuation of the system of president, of son of the former president Gurbanguly. So it is a political question. So according to the alliance abroad. So, and question to Elira Turdubaeva, so a crucial theme of in digital era. So as for philosophical basis, contradictions develop world, yes. And so, as you said, Kaspersky, and it is a fight with viruses, Troyansky and others, and there are many frauds and scams, and cyber security is developing now, and my question is, who is in the leading role? Scams, frauds, or cyber security? That's the question, please. Two questions to Allan Mustard, and you said you don't know about Allan.
I'm not sure I understood your questions. Could you restate your question?
So, living in post-Soviet space, we are interested in all the situations in our neighboring countries, and for this, several days ago, I have read that there is a political strategy of oppositional some representatives of Turkmenia. So it was my question. Maybe it is just some words according it. And the question to Elira Turdubaeva, you have got it. Thank you.
Well, in terms of a political strategy of opposition in Turkmenistan, there is an opposition that's based in Turkey. It's been there for a long time. We hear from them periodically, but I don't see that there is any real serious opposition to the current regime. Nothing that seems to have any popular support. There are a couple of problems. One problem is that the safety valve in Turkmenistan is migration abroad. So people who are dissatisfied with the circumstances in Turkmenistan simply go away. And maybe that has to do with nomadism, that as a semi-nomadic culture, if the Turkmen don't like where they are, they simply pack up and move. So that's one problem. The second problem kind of comes back to what Elira was talking about, the surveillance state. I remember this was several years ago when I was still in Turkmenistan talking to one of my staff who was talking about how her son was surfing the web and he was of an age where he could now start drinking alcohol, so he was researching cocktails. And he came across something called the Molotov cocktail. He realized that wasn't something he was going to drink, so he went on, and a half hour later there was a knock at the door. The police showed up, wanting to know why he was researching Molotov cocktails on the internet. So they were watching what he was doing in real time, and within half an hour could respond. And that was almost a decade ago. So when you have a surveillance state that is that intrusive, the opposition cannot function domestically. It has to be offshore, and as soon as you move offshore, you basically lose the ability to do anything.
Thank you.
Yes, you are right. We have a lot of scam and fraud online, cyber attacks going on financial, on individuals, mostly retired people who are not very digitally literate, who just hit and open this Word document or any link they send. And so that's why we need, as I mentioned, the huge data literacy education training for public, and also this in terms of cybersecurity now, mostly Russian IT people, like including hackers, they are all, most of them are in Central Asia, who escaped, relocants we call them. They are based in Central Asia, working remotely. And also these semiconductor chips from China, which are being re-exported to Russia for this war, drones in Ukraine for their drone attacks. So these are also, yes, my personal also from data I have that because of sanctions, now Russia is getting all the semiconductor chips from China through Central Asia, through Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan for their drones and weapons. So these are all interrelated, and so that's why we need, again, this data sovereignty and more experts, and so that the governments use this, regulate this space and keep our data protected, protecting from leaks. Yeah, and this is really difficult because these governments themselves are authoritarian, and they need to change first, in order to protect our data.
Thank you.
So unfortunately, we are pretty much at time, but lots of interest in this panel, and I know our speakers will stay afterwards, except of course Alexander, who's going to go to bed. But the rest of us will be here, and I look forward to seeing you in the break. Thank you.